Hi and welcome to Flipping Websites, Tactics for Buying and Selling. So one of the things that we need to do is when we finally come down to the crunch, we've checked out everything is in order, the website is owned by the person who's selling it or the broker that's selling it has permission to sell it. We've checked out all that information, but what we now need to do is we now need to get the right price. Sellers always overvalue their site. Unfortunately, and it's the same for everybody, when you have built something from the ground up and you have put a lot of effort into it, you've got all the graphics, you've got all the content, everything else that you've done is all at a cost to you. You add that cost together in your head and that's what you think your website's worth. Unfortunately, your website is only worth the traffic that it brings, the items or services, the products or services that it sells, and that's pretty much it. That is all you can value on your site. So the first thing to do is when you're looking at any of the websites that sell websites or any broker sites that sell websites, and you look at the prices, one of the things you can do is you can make offers. The first thing you'll do to annoy a seller is offering silly money. If a website is worth $3,000, then don't offer $200. If a website is worth $50,000, don't offer $5. All you're going to do to a seller by offering silly money is show that you don't really understand how buying and selling websites work. They're just going to think you're a waste of time and probably ignore an offer of silly money anyway. Either that or they'll just won't take anything seriously you say after you've made that silly offer. So if a website is, in your opinion, worth $5,000, then a reasonable offer would be $3,500, $4,000, and then negotiations can start. Try using reason with the seller to lower the price. Facts and figures stand for themselves. So effectively what you can do is use the seller's information against them. For whatever reason you can see that there is actually a decline in the traffic, then it's up to you, and it's going to be part of your job to increase those stats. So from that point of view, you're going to have to put in more work, and effectively the website isn't actually worth quite as much as the seller thinks it is, which is great. Maybe the site has got low revenue. Low revenue is no good to a buyer. You're going to want to buy a site that is able to sell product, able to sell its service. And effectively, if that has been in decline over the past few weeks or months, then what's going to happen is you're going to have to spend time and money building that up again. Effectively, if a seller says to you, well, yeah, the traffic has been dropping and the revenue has been dropping, but if I implement this, this, and this, it's going to increase the traffic and it's going to increase the revenue, then say to them, well, why aren't you doing it? They'll generally come back with, oh, I don't have the time, or I'm not interested anymore. Well, unfortunately, unless those changes are actually implemented, the site is not worth as much as they're saying. And stand firm, because at the end of the day, what have you got to lose? You haven't parted with any money yet. The seller wants to sell his site. They obviously want a fair price. You want to possibly buy the site, and you want a fair price too. So there is going to be always ground in the middle. Unverifiable earnings is another way to actually reduce the price. If they're unable to produce a decent average earnings, maybe the site's been up for a year, 2 years, and 1 month it's earning $1,000, pounds, euro, the next month it's earning $50, pounds, euro. It makes no difference. If it's up and down, then there's obviously a reason for that. Maybe the advertising hasn't been constant. There are loads of reasons why the earnings can be up and down, but again, it's a reason for you to pull the price of the site down to closer to where you want it to be. And unfortunately, they will argue and they will say, well, if I implemented this, this, and this, again, the earnings will go up. Well, do it. Don't sell the site. Implement the changes and make more money. But if they're not willing to implement those changes, it's down to you, and this is the whole reason why we're going to be flipping websites. One thing to watch out for is who says the price first. A portion of my past, I sold windows, and we were taught in our sales, and it worked every time, the person who speaks first regarding the price buys the windows. Now, if we put this against website flipping, you're talking to a seller who is trying to sell their website. You as the buyer trying to buy the website, and you both have a figure in mind. The first person to say their figure loses. And the reason being is because if you as the buyer say, look, I want to pay $5,000 for your site. I think your site is worth $5,000. And the person who was selling it was actually only wanting $1,000. You've just lost yourself $4,000, because they're not going to turn around to you and say, well, actually, all I wanted was $1,000. And if they do, they're a fool. However, if the seller says, look, I want $1,000 for my website, and you were prepared to pay $5,000, well, now your quid's in, because you've just saved yourself $4,000. So if you take it as read that the first person to say the price is generally the person to lose, make them value their site. They may go round the houses a good few times. They may ask you, just give me a price. What do you think it's worth? Just a rough price. Don't be baited in by that. Just counteract it by coming back with saying, well, I don't know. What do you think? What sort of price are you looking for? Try and bounce it back to them at all times. Try and get them to name the price first. It may come down to the fact that it's only email communication. So again, it may take a few emails to actually get an offer price out of them. One of the best ways in to get a price out of a seller is to offer enticements. If you say to them, look, I've got cash waiting here to buy this site, just tell me what your price is. Quite often, a seller has been selling their site for a few weeks, a few months, could be even longer than that. And we'll find out when you come to actually flip your website, you're not going to flip it in 2 days. You're not going to flip it in a week. It does take time. So that seller may have been waiting for a good deal of time, and to get an enticement like there is cash waiting suddenly might loosen their lips. Fantastic way of doing it. And they can turn around and say, well, actually, what I'm looking for is, and you've got your price. The whole enticement of rapid payment has to stay there. Once you've said it, they're probably going to be on your case about it. But at the end of the day, you've got the offer out of them. When you make an offer, make sure it has conditions. If you haven't verified all the facts, or if the seller hasn't been able to verify all the facts, and you're making an offer because you actually want that site and you don't want it to slip away, then make sure your offer has conditions. Yeah, I'll pay you $5,000 for your site, as long as you can verify the traffic, as long as you can verify the revenue, as long as you can verify whatever it is you want them to verify. Make sure it has those conditions. Make sure that you have everything in place before the deal is finally done. Once a contract is struck, a contract is struck, and that's the point of no return. So make sure that when you do that, you have conditions on your side. You'll probably find that the seller is going to have conditions too, but as long as you do and you're happy with them and they're happy with them, everything's fine. Once the deal is done, that's the time to possibly push for extras, okay? Now, it's a little cheeky thing to do, and you don't get anything in this life without asking for it. So once the deal is struck, ask for the extras. What extras could you ask for, you say? Well, easy. Okay, so you're just about to take on a website that you don't really understand the structure of, you haven't seen the structure of, or you don't know how it works, how it operates, how the product or service is sold, or how they used to sell it, how they contact their database of clients, do they have an e-sign, all this sort of thing. So one thing to ask for is, do they have an operations manual? It doesn't have to be a bound document. It can just be any document that they can send through with, this is what we do in this particular circumstance. Maybe you might need a configuration document so that they have a control panel on their website that does certain things, turns certain things on the website, turns certain things off. You're not going to learn that in 5 minutes. You really are going to need for some sort of instruction. And while you're asking for an instruction manual, ask for training. Ask them to give you as long as possible, 3 months, 6 months, commit them to that sort of training. Because if you say, well, I need a week's training, and in 2 weeks' time you need to come back to them, they're not really going to be wanting all the time to help you. Some sellers are nice and they will actually do that for you, but you need to be able to hold them to a document and say, look, you said in my contract that I had 3 months training, we're only 2 months in, and I don't know how to do this. Can you tell me, please? Can you help me, please? That's the way to do it. Another thing that you really have to get down on paper, and again, this is always good to have, you can find contract templates online. One of the things to have is a non-competitive contract, okay, or a non-competition clause, whereby they've built this site, they know exactly how to run this site, and they've brought this site to where it is today. What's to stop them, once they've sold it to you, to go off and build an exact replica? You need to know that you have at least a clear 12 months, even 2 years. 2 years is actually quite standard for a non-competitive clause in a contract. You can even push it out to 3 if that's going to sweeten the deal to give a little bit of extra money to the seller. But I would strongly advise to have a non-competitive contract clause, just purely and simply for your own benefit. Otherwise, you're going to be up against the same person, and your flipping your site is really going to be in competition with someone who knows the product or service better than you do. Other extras, other things that you can ask for, it could be inventory, stock. Basically, if you're buying a website that you're trying to flip that sells a particular product, then that website generally is going to have some sort of product inventory or some sort of store of product. Now, if you've just paid $15,000, pounds, euro for a website, it's not inconceivable to ask them to ask if they have any product that you can throw in, product to get you started. Just be a little bit cheeky. What have you got to lose? They may well say, no, sorry, you're going to have to buy that. But if you ask, it's quite often they want to get rid of all that stock that they have, and they will be quite happy to pass it on to you. Therefore, you might get $2,000-3,000, pounds, euro worth of stock, and all thrown into the bargain. Fantastic. You just never know. If you don't ask, you don't get. So finally, if you're at the negotiation stage for buying a website that you're looking to flip, don't be afraid to ask for anything. The worst that they can say is no. The best that they can say is give you, yep, that's fine. I'll throw in stock. I'll throw in this. I'll throw in that. I'll throw in training. You can even ask them to move the website. Again, when you're taking over a website, you don't know exactly what the structure of the site is. If you try and move the site and you damage something, it may take a wee while to actually fix it, and you're going to have to ask them to look at the code, to look at the structure, and find out exactly where you've gone wrong. So I hope that's helped you in your negotiations for buying your site that you want to flip. And again, thanks ever so much for listening. Hope to see you soon.